Beginning of the chat in what I think is the first question. If I skip one of them, I will ask my colleagues in charge of the chat to remind me. So the first one I see here is that, is it essential that all consortium partners are EU or Horizon 2020 associated? We have a partner in South Africa. So Attract is no way different from any other Horizon 2020 project. So please consult the guide in terms of participating countries. Everybody is eligible to be a participant. Now the Commission has a list of projects that are entitled to receive funding besides being eligible. I don't know exactly the status of South Africa, but Attract in no way is different in this respect from any other Horizon 2020 project. Some of the countries are eligible to participate, for example, US, just to put an example, but they are not eligible to receive funding because they are considered to be countries that are, well, I don't know, just to call it like this, they don't need money, they have their own money. Second question that I see here, is it allowed to subcontract with a third country partner eligible for funding according to Horizon 2020 rules? So yes, subcontracting is allowed in Attract. As I mentioned, Attract is no different from the rules of Horizon 2020 with respect to subcontracting, eligible costs, etc., etc. So whenever you have a question, just consult the guide for applicants of Horizon 2020, and most likely you will find the answer there. Because as I mentioned, Attract is no different from any Horizon 2020. If still you have some doubts, please write an email to the Attract Project Administrative Office in the email that is indicated in the guide for applicants. But I certainly encourage every one of you to check first the Horizon 2020 rules, because the answer, I'm pretty sure that is going to be there as well, since Attract is no different from that. I understand that companies can take part of the consortium, even lead the project. Absolutely. Again, Attract is no different from any Horizon 2020 project in terms of rules of participation. Other question that I see there, the next one. As far as I understand, a group can be involved to only one project. This is regardless to its role in the consortium, main investigation partner. Yes, I mentioned very clearly that the same consortium can only, in the same consortium, I mean the list of participants, regardless of whether it's the role that they submit the project, whether they are coordinators or participants, but it's the same consortium, can be only involved in one project, and they will need to choose beforehand, and please consult the Attract submission template. They should choose the funding modalities. Are you applying for modality A or are you applying for modality B? You cannot apply for both. What are the rules about co-financing the project budget, particularly for corporate project partners? Well, again, Attract is no different from any other Horizon 2020 project. So if you have co-financing from private sources, be it welcome. The only thing that you need to take into account when you have potential co-financing from public grants, what we advise about double funding and what the Commission considers double funding in Horizon 2020. This is clearly stated, and you have a link to consult in the guide for applicants. It does not concern private co-financing. Is it imperative to already have a project from Attract phase 1? No, it's not imperative. Absolutely, but please read the topics very carefully and remember about the attract spirit, collaboration with the partners of the attract ecosystem. That doesn't mean that you should have a project already from attract phase 1. That doesn't mean that other partners in a constellation that didn't appear in attract phase 1 could not be incorporated in a consortium. Now, the spirit is collaboration, that people talk to each other, complementary technologies. Technologies that are coming from different sources or ways or different projects, and that at the end of the day are forming a system level technologies, which is what the call text emphasizes all the time. Next question, how many projects do you expect to be funded? Which success rate? Difficult to say at this time. As much as we can. I mean, we have a range of funding that is clearly established. We gave you indications of the type of proposals that the project consortium board will encourage, that the independent scientific committee is expected to receive. How many projects is a question that I cannot answer. I don't think anybody can answer this. Next question, some of us who have applied to attract phase 1 with institution X, but have 2 affiliations, can we apply with our alternative institution, or should the initial institution already granted in phase 1 maintain? Well, it's up to you to decide. The rules are very clear. They are the same rules as in any Horizon 2020 project. You have to have a legal entity. Whether this legal entity was the same in phase 1 or is going to change in phase 2. In terms of submission, it makes no difference as long as it's a legal entity and you have a validated PIC. Can we start a consortium, or should it be linked to a phase 1 project? Again, there is complete freedom. We are not establishing the rules of the game, except encouraging people to actually collaborate among the project, cross-fertilization of the projects that are already in phase 1 without being compulsory that you are just limiting yourself to this. What was the success rate for attract phase 1 proposals? Do you expect the same for phase 2? This is a different ballpark, okay? As Sergio has mentioned, in attract phase 1, we received 1,200 proposals. As you may know, it was a very bottom-up call. Attract phase 2 is a different game. We have an open thematic call, so the 2 success rates cannot be compared with each other. The only thing I could say or venture is that probably, but this is just common sense and logics, the attract phase 2 will have a higher success rate than the attract phase 1. When would the project be able to start exactly if granted? I already have answered the question. The project starts officially at the signature of the third-party project agreement. For those projects that will last very little in signing the TPPA, well, this is something you gain. For those projects in which the signature of the TPPA will be delayed, then, well, this is time that is consumed in this action. Each one of the projects will start at the signature of the TPPA and last 26 months out of this signature. I, of course, encourage as an administrative person in attract phase 2 not to delay the signature of the third-party project agreement. Next question, you mentioned clustering with other project funding in phase 1. What if no other project is relevant? Well, I first of all would like you to encourage you to look carefully and be a little bit imaginative on the type of technologies that that could complement yours, whether these technologies are, think about that everybody, for example, needs data processing, or that everybody, for example, needs to complement their device or sensor maybe with additional ones. So, of course, if no other project is relevant, that's it. But I certainly encourage echoing the advice and the voices of Michael and Sergio, that you look around and be open and imaginative. If accepted, how long lasts the projects? I already answered. The projects are going to last 26 months, counting from the signature of the third-party contract agreement. Next question that I see, phase 2 is launched as an open call. Please explain how 9 themes have been chosen. Are these really detailed and cannot be considered as open? I have to assume this poses an issue for many attract. So attract phase 2, as already informed in the kickoff meeting, is a thematic open call. And this is simply complying to with what the Commission has or was wrote already in the call where Attract is being funded. I just gave the title of the call in case that you want to check it. The Commission asked the Attract Consortium to organize a call leveraging or based on the most promising opportunities of phase 1. And this is exactly what the Attract call is. It's a thematic open call. Could you provide examples on what you expect in terms of complementary funding for modality 2? Well, examples of complementary funding, I answer it partially as part of all the questions, whether you have, for example, funding from national sources, whether you have funding from private investors, whether you have funding from corporate investors, something, an indication that, well, you have a well-established route to the market and you have a parallel interest besides of Attract, of some actors that actually are interested in your technology going to the market. The next question, what is the funding rate for both modalities for the different institutions, research centers, SMEs? Are the same funding rates as Horizon 2020? So you can check them in the Horizon 2020 rules. I don't remember now by heart that I think the different rates of modalities for funding was something of FP7. I think Horizon 2020, already the rules have been unified for all kinds of institutions. In any case, the Attract funding rates are exactly the same as the one in Horizon 2020. Next questions that I find there, how do you expect collaboration with the students? Can we add funding for the student projects? Very good question, thanks for formulating this. Do not add any funding for the student projects. That is why Attract is funding through a different open calls those universities that would like to actually establish student teams for interacting with your project. You don't need to reserve any budget for funding student activities of any kind. You just need, and we will organize the process from the Attract administrative office when we know, as they have been evaluated by different independent committee, the different universities that will be establishing student teams for collaborating with you. Each one of the student teams will come with a tutor. The tutor will be the liaison person with the liaison person that you will nominate. So you won't be flooded with questions of students. You will be asked to interact with them. For example, how? Explaining them your technology. what your technology does, what is your main application and vision. And the students, they will organize themselves in projects as well, interacting with you and telling you, for example, look, we have figured it out that your technology could be applied to something else. And the students' mission is to elaborate a prototype themselves. You may check in the Attract website the space for the student projects, the pilot that was organized in phase 1, and then you see the videos, and then you see what type of things they do. The mission of the students is to prototype solutions inspired by your technology, especially tackling sustainable development goals. So your interaction with them in terms of explaining them your technology, in terms of acting as a sounding board for the student team is crucial. So that will be the type of interaction that you will carry out with the students. The next question, could you please elaborate a bit more on the work with the student teams? Already I have answered this question, I think. How intense is their involvement in the project expected to be? What are the obligations of the students and consortia? Could you give an example of a foreseen type of collaboration? Let me just quickly share my screen to show you something. And at least I offer this as a guiding, as a guiding orientation. I hope that my screen is visible. I encourage you to visit a Attract Phase 1 showroom. Probably you are all familiar with your projects being highlighted there, but go to the student projects. That was, this is the pilot of Phase 1. And here you could see the stories behind the student projects that were pilots on Phase 1 for those of you that were funded in Phase 1 and volunteer to interact with the students. This will give you a very good idea of what the students are going to do and how you could be of help with them. Is the Attract matchmaking platform from Phase 1 still working? No, it isn't. The Attract matchmaking platform was only habilitated with the purpose of the Attract final conference. Nevertheless, if you want to contact a project, I will encourage you to go to the Attract showroom and check all the projects there. When you would like information about the project, if you download the article submitted by this project, it gives you immediately the name of who is behind this project. Can companies that have not participated to the Phase 1 participate in the Phase 2? Of course, and very welcome. How far is there flexibility with regard to the themes? Our project is thematically located somewhere in between, sharing aspects from several of the listed themes. Well, this is a question very difficult to answer. The important thing is that you are critical with yourself, and then you figure out that there is a match. And second, if you say that your project is thematically located somewhere in between, well, it may be good to contact those projects that could constitute a complement to your proposal. So yes, there is flexibility. How much? This is a question that cannot be quantified. The most we can say, that is already been said this morning several times, is that the encouragement is that people talk with each other, because, as emphasized this morning, what the independent scientific committee is looking for and what Attract Phase 2 is about is a system of combinations of different technologies. The next question, if several modality A projects are unified in a cluster, what will be the funds? A sum of its project funds? I don't understand this question. I think it is sufficiently clear that you can only apply to modality A or modality B being the same consortia. If the question is referring, well, can we combine different fundings from modality A or modality B? This is not exactly what it is meant to be done. I mean, you need to be clear whether you apply to modality A and whether you apply to modality B. And if you are the same organization and you have been granted 2 different projects, well, my guess is that you need to check with your administrative services how you would deal with it in order to have the numbers clear on what you have spent in one project and what you have spent in another project. The next questions that I see here, if a project proposal gets any expression of interest from an institution external to the project consortium, should we include the letter of interest during the submission, spending 1-page letter? No, as I mentioned, there are no other annexes to the proposal than the power of attorney. So don't even bother to include other annexes. If you have an expression of interest, please use the text of the project to express it and comment that there is a letter of interest, and this letter of interest could be made available upon request if required or needed, or there is any interest from your side. Can institutions from Russia or Belarus take part in phase 2 and get funding? Again, Attract is no different from any other Horizon 2020 project. So I certainly encourage you to check which countries are entitled especially to get funding in Horizon 2020. Horizon 2020 is a program open to any country for participating. Now it's not open to everybody to be entitled to get funded. There are countries that for different reasons are considered entitled to get funding because they are countries on development or whatever other reason the Commission may have. There are countries that are not entitled to get funding for many of the several reasons. If you check in the different websites of the Commission, for example, the Horizon 2020 guidelines, you will find the answer there. Attract, again, is no different from any other Horizon 2020 project in terms of participation, funding, eligible costs, etc., etc., etc. For example, now that I remember, the question of if we buy equipment, what happens? What type of costs are eligible? Again, same rules as in Horizon 2020. Normally, the only eligible thing are depreciation costs of your equipment along the use or correlated with the use of the equipment that in your project. But again, if you have any doubt, the best thing to consult is the Horizon 2020 guidelines. Next question that I see here, should it be absolutely same consortium as in phase 2, or it can be extended or changed? Well, I hope that the answer to this question is already very clear. It doesn't need to be the same consortium. It can be extended or changed, and there is a strong encouragement to call other projects and to get in contact with other projects that could constitute a complement to your technology that are coming already from phase one. Next question that I see, but a single legal entity can join more than one proposal. That is right. Yes, that is right. A single legal entity can be part of different proposals in different funding modalities, but as a consortium, okay, you cannot apply for modality A or modality B. You have to make a choice. And you cannot apply to two topics at the same time. A single legal entity, and this is the power of talking to different people in an ecosystem, because Attract is an ecosystem. This is a power of talking to different people. You may find that your technology complements different proposals that might be in construction by other people, and you will be highly benefiting out of it. The next question, if a consortium was part of Attract 1, should the same consortium continue into Attract phase 2? Again, the same question. I hope the answer already has been clear. Encouragement of people, talk to each other, incorporate new partners, even that we are not there in Attract phase 1, especially end users. Not many proposals have end users in Attract phase 1. Talk to different people. This is an ecosystem. This is not people developing technologies in silos. This is not the spirit of Attract. Do people who pass phase 1 stage has a better chance to get funding in phase 2? No. Not at all. But again, be remembered that the Attract consortium is complying with the Commission mandate to launch a call that is leveraging on the most promising opportunities of phase 1. Therefore, the Attract phase 2 is a thematic open call in which people need to talk to each other. The next question that I see, will funding be received by the lead participant then shared? We had issues in the past with this scheme, particularly with pound to euros. So yes, like in any Horizon 2020 project, the funding is always given to the coordinator, and it's the duty of the coordinator to share the funding according to what you have agreed among yourselves. Regarding the conversion from pounds to euros or other currency, please check the conversion rate in order to record your costs that the Commission establishes. Again, you can find this information in the Horizon 2020 online manual. The natural continuation of our project is the smaller grant. However, a somewhat different idea has emerged, which would be more suitable for the €2 million grant. Can one PI apply for both? Does an application to the €2 million track require previous Attract grant on the same topic? Again, the same question. As a consortium, you cannot apply to two modalities at the same time and to two different themes at the same time. That doesn't mean that a single legal entity, as I expressed before, cannot be part of different projects. So talk to each other. Now, the question is, the natural continuation of our project is the smaller grant. However, a somewhat different idea has emerged, which would be more suitable for €2 million grant. Okay, be welcome then to submit a proposal to the €2 million grant. But please, again, encouragement. Talk to others. And especially encouragement to talk to people, to your ecosystem. You are part of the ecosystem of project coming from phase 1. The next question that is on the list. Is it possible to add a partner that was not part of phase 1 proposal? Yes, it is possible. Next question. Does an application to the €2 million track require a previous Attract grant on the same topic? No, it doesn't. The next question that I see on the list: when joining a consortium from phase 2, a phase 1 project should find a way to include the technologies developed in phase 1 or sharing the expertise. Okay, let me read this to see if I understand it. When joining a consortium for phase 2, a phase 1 project should find a way to include the technologies developed in phase 1 or sharing the expertise. Not necessarily the technology developed during phase 1 project can be also an added value for the consortium. Yes, it can be both. I mean, if you establish a dialogue, I mean, I'm not going to tell you how to form a consortium. You are researchers, you know how to network. And it's out of a conversation that you establish saying, look, we have developed this in phase 1. We think that is a complement for phase 2. Are you planning to submit? I mean, you know that the Attract Project Consortium Board, the Attract Independent Scientific Committee, will welcome people that cluster together, that cross-pollinize ideas. Out of this conversation is how proposals are getting together, whether you are putting your technology in phase 1 or whether you are putting new knowledge or whatever it is up to you and your internal conversation on how you submit proposals. It's the same thing that you do in any other Horizon 2020 call. When you go, I don't know, when I used to be a researcher or an R&D manager in the industry, I went to the commission Infodays and I look around for people that were interested in submitting proposals and saying, look, I mean, can we actually have a chat? So it's a normal process of networking. What we encourage is this to happen. Are overheads foreseen in case of the standard 20% rate? So again, Attract is no difference from any other Horizon 2020 rules. So yes, if you want to include overhead in the proposal, include overhead. Just make sure that you have an internal agreement of whether all of you as a consortium include overhead. And the rate is exactly the same as in Horizon 2020. If Attract is the thematic call, does it mean that only the project satisfying selecting things mentioned in the Attract will be granted? Well, this is a thematic call for a reason. There are themes that are leading the different topics. That doesn't mean that you might necessarily be successful if you don't think that those are leading themes that should be complemented with additional technologies. So that is why we are encouraging people to talk to each other. The next questions, that is, according to the Attract Grant Agreement, the maximum amount of financial support may not exceed. Does it mean that within the consortium applying each individual? No. So this is the famous Appendix K from the European Commission, okay? You don't need to be paying attention to this. This has been part of the Attract Consortium dialogue with the European Commission to reach a level of flexibility of funding that goes beyond the 60K, okay? The only thing that you need to be paying attention is that this time, the funding for the R&D&I projects is not going in one go, as you can imagine, because it's much more money. And we are going to do it in a way specified in the third-party contract of payment in tranches, subjected to midterm and final term reviews, like in any other project of Horizon 2020. The amounts are much bigger, therefore it needs to be a control, and the control, of course, is as the Commission does it in normal Horizon 2020 projects. So read again very careful the guide for applicants. There is a full and detailed explanation of how the total funding will be distributed per project. And it's, of course, each individual entity can request much more than 60K. I mean, You can request for any value that you deem necessary in agreement with your consortium partners that does not exceed the maximum threshold that the Guide for Applicants offers as a guideline. Now, the final amount of funding, and this is important, and I have expressed this in the guide, and is already in the Guide for Applicants. The IC, as an evaluation body, has the final word in how much your proposal deserves. So be aware that you will need to justify your funding in a convincing way, like in any other proposal of Horizon 2020. Where can I find the proposal template and where do I submit the proposal? Well, you can find the proposal template in the Guide for Applicants that you can download from the Attract website. It's very clearly indicated where you can find the documentation. Next question, can any university engage with phase 2 or are only consortium students eligible? So the Attract phase 2 is launching another call that is called the Attract student program call. Okay, this is where the students are coming from. It's a parallel call in which, again, it has its own guide for applicants. It's directed to the community of universities that have proven experience in design thinking programs. So if you are interested in submitting a proposal in this area, you may contact these communities. Okay, but are only consortium students eligible? No, the students that you will interact with you are not consortium students, are not your students. That doesn't mean that if you have students in your consortium, etc., you may encourage them once you know the students' teams that have been awarded through the call and that will be, let's say, liaising with your project. That doesn't mean that your PhD students cannot benefit from this interaction, but the students are not your consortium students. The students will be coming from the call for the student programs that Attract is launching. Attract, again, is launching 3 calls. Attract phase 2 is launching a call for R&D&I projects, is launching a call for a student program, and is launching a call for a socioeconomic study. I hope that point was clear. The next question that I see in line for modality B, is the letter of interest from industry not involved into consortium could be appreciated as future complementary funding? Again, I answer this question. Don't include any letter as an appendix, because the only appendix that needs to be sent with the proposal is the power of attorney. If you have interest from other companies and you can prove it in the eventual event that the IC might ask you, okay, is what you mentioned here that you have an interest of company A, B, or C real, or you just invented it? You may keep those letters and mention that you have them and from who, etc., in the proposal text. The next question that I see on the line, can any entity be part of 2 separate applications to phase 2? Yes, I answered it before. The next question, what is the installment scheme? All in one go, initial funding, midterm profile cap. Please read the guide for applicants, especially the third-party contract agreement. There is a whole section of it in which is specifically mentioned and is extremely parallel to what happens in any Horizon 2020 projects. Are there any limitations in terms of the number of participants involved in the project? No, there are no limitations. Neither in number, neither in nationalities. will the different modality, I mean, this is something that the Attract Consortium has discussed with the Commission. I mean, there's no quota and it's not an eligible criteria if you say, well, would I be more eligible for funding if I have two I don't know, Spanish organization, or I have four. Form a consortium with the partners that you need coming from the countries that you need. Now, if you, I mean, apply common sense. I mean, if you have a project proposal with 20 organizations in Spain and somewhere else from a different country, it's a bit odd, isn't it? The next question that I see, will the different modalities have very different success rates? Will the 2 million modality have a lower success rate? No, they will not have. Again, the success rate depends on the quality of the proposals that are sent, and the quality in all senses. Scientific idea, breakthrough potential, benefits for science and society. You have all the evaluation criteria in the guide for applicants. Encouragement of talking to different people, find complementary technologies, demonstrate that you can work beyond silos. The next question I see on the line. If the proposal is out of themes mentioned in the annex, does it mean that this proposal have no chance to be funded? Well, to be honest, it has less chances. And maybe you have to go the other way around and see whether your technology actually is a good complement to other ones that are more specified in the themes. That's why Attract is a thematic open call. It's not the same ballpark as phase one. And it's this ballpark because we are complying with what the Commission has told us to do in the call text, which is specified clearly if you happen to read it again. Attract phase two leverages on the most promising opportunities of phase one. The next question, must there be at least one member of the consortium that had a phase one project funded, or could all members of the consortium be external to Attract phase one? Well, I mean, you are free, of course, there is complete freedom of forming a completely new consortium, and there is no obligation that even one of them is part of phase one. Now, I think that the message this morning is of a clear encouragement to leverage on phase one as well. Can a technology developed in phase one be changed, extended, updated for phase two submission? Well, of course. I mean, be aware that phase one, it was about TRL 3 minimum. Many of you have achieved higher levels, but I think it has been clear this morning, and you can read it as well in the funding modalities, that TRL should be significantly higher. And whether for being higher you need to change, extend, or update is part of the proposal that you are probably planning to submit. Can we propose other technologies than the ones described on the themes? Of course. Now, be aware that Attract is a thematic call. It's a thematic open call, and that what we are looking again and again is that people talk to each other and find complementarities. The next question that I see in line with 185 people in this chat already and a total funding available of 25 million euros, how do you conclude that the success rate will indeed be higher than for phase one? Well, because in phase one, as I mentioned, we received, or the Independent Scientific Committee received 1,200 proposals. You were one among the, let's say, competitive ones you are among the 170 projects, as Michael has stressed this morning, that for reasons of excellence for your projects, you were funded among 1,200. Because this is the part that you that allows one to think that the success rate is going to be higher in a track phase 2, because again, a track phase 2 is a thematic open call. We understand the need to enlarge the project and to include the end users that will help it increase the technology readiness level. Also understand that the encouragement is to include all the phase 1 project. Question is it part of the selection criteria by the IC that the project is enlarged with other phase 1 project? Well, it's not a selection criteria, it cannot be. It's an encouragement, and as an encouragement, we certainly encourage. Again, to be clear, it's not a selection criteria, it's a strong encouragement. I don't see any more questions in the chat. I hope I managed to answer all of them. I kindly ask my colleagues that have been following the chat in more detail than I do to remind me if is there a question to be answered.
No, I don't see anything else pending, Pablo.
Let's wait. I propose, oh, there is another one coming. It has been my experience after talking with some projects in phase 1 which share interest but prefer not to collaborate, to do not share resources with too many people. Is there a way of creating real communication without fear for money or conflict of interest? Well, I mean, this is part of the networking process. In a track, we do what we can do. You have all the projects in the showroom. We are strongly encourage people to collaborate. We cannot put a gun in the head of anybody and tell them collaborate. And again, we cannot put collaboration as a selection criteria. We certainly strongly encourage, and I don't know how many times it has been repeated this morning, that Attract is an ecosystem with the aim of people to cross-fertilize technologies, to achieve a system-level technologies. A system, as at least understood by the European Commission, is never monotechnologies. It's a system solution, and well, the message is launched. Can you say something about the themes? Well, I mean, I think they are sufficiently clear in the guide for applicants. I will be rereading the text. I don't see the point about this. The most important message regarding the themes is that you keep in your mind the word systems. And what I have highlighted already this morning, there is a paragraph that is not trivial and is not obvious and is not there just about wasting words. And it's a paragraph that is in every single theme after the theme has been formulated, in which there is an encouragement of collaborating with other projects. And it's not about wasting words. Do you have an idea about which percentage of the budget is going to be dedicated to each modality? No. The IC, as I mentioned this morning, will have the privilege, as it happens in Horizon 2020 projects funded with the Commission, the evaluators, and I'm evaluator on many calls, from Green Deal to Fed Open, etc., will make also recommendations to the Commission. So the percentage will be known in the end, and it's highly dependent on the quality of the proposals and how the budgets are justified in terms of what is asked for as an achievement in every proposal. Is our understanding correct that themes originate from the content of projects or group of projects from phase one? Yes, this is exactly what the Commission has asked us. Again, I remind my first slide, which I will make available after this talk, that a track phase 2 is funded out of a call. I will share it again. Just for reminding, one sec. Excuse me for a second. Let me just share quickly the screen. A track is receiving funding originally from this call. In this call is clearly stated that the Commission expected a proposal for a track phase 2 at that time, potentially based on the most promising opportunities for phase 1. So this is what has been done to comply with the Commission mandate. And at the same time, of course, providing opportunities for new actors to enter into play. That's why the consortiums, of course, encouragement to enlarge them. That's why there is an encouragement to partner with other projects that could offer potential complementary technologies that are coming from phase 1. So the message is quite clear. I hope it is along the course of this morning, not only from my side, but also it was pretty clear on the message of Michael as Project Consortium Board Chair and Sergio as Independent Scientific Committee Chair. I don't know if there are any other questions. So again, the guide for applicants facilitates an email with questions. Okay, there is another one. On a more technical note, the person responsible to liaise with the student projects does not need to be the same as that liaising with the socioeconomic study, but it could be, right? Yes, you are free. Now, as I mentioned this morning, liaising with the student projects and socioeconomic study is compulsory for phase 2, especially with the student projects, since, as you may have noticed, you have a deliverable attached to it, and it's a contractual binding deliverable because it figures in the third-party project contract agreement, which is the person that you nominate in your consortium, whether there are two different people, whether there's the same person, up to you. Let's wait a couple of more minutes to see if there are more questions available. I think there is one. Where should the collaboration links to all the phase 1 project be specified with the new application? Well, just find the suitable place. It could be, for example, in the introduction of the submitted proposal. When you say this proposal is coming out of the, or this proposal is sent out of the collaboration of projects X, Y, Z, W, and X prime coming from phase 1. This is a very clear statement and a very clear message that indeed you are in the spirit of the Attract ecosystem. You have talked to others, and the result is this proposal sent with organizations all incorporating projects that are coming from institutions X, Y, Z, and additional enlargement of the consortium with end users of different types that can absorb the different technologies generated in the system pursuit of this project. So this is pretty good way to make a statement up front. as an example, I mean, how you express it in the proposal. Normally, when I send proposals to the European Commission, I'm very clear because I'm an evaluator as well, and I appreciate when people write things clearly. Hi, Pablo, could you please specify again if we should include LOIs for our technology in the proposal or leave them out? I did not quite get your point.
Letters of interest, I think, Pablo.
Letters of interest. No, please keep it for yourself. As I mentioned again, the proposal submitted should contain one single PDF with the proposal itself, respecting all the rules, plus one single annex, that is the power of attorney. If you have letters of recommendation, mention them in the proposal, mention it in the text, mention it in a footnote, mention it in whatever shape or form that you would like. Keep it and express these letters of interest would be made available in case that the consortium is asked, because the independent scientific committee might have an interest in asking you, can you prove that you have these letters? Okay, as I mentioned this morning, the independent scientific committee keeps the right to call at any moment, it depends on the number of proposals that will be submitted, to call the consortium for a face-to-face interview or a remote interview, because we might be still in COVID time, to ask you specific questions. Is this proposal saying this or that? Is this realistic? It's not realistic. Let me just go back because there were some additional questions entering. How important is complementary funding for modality 2? Very. Don't forget that modality 2 is 2 million euros. It's much more significant amount of money. And this amount of money also is associated to a higher TRL. And well, achieving a higher TRL, not only in a track, but in any project of Horizon 2020, it requires that you already have interest in place from other sources that is not only public funding. This is simply common sense. On theme 2, a sub-theme states, focusing on surface plasmon resonance. Does it mean that the theme is exclusive to this technology? Well, as I mentioned, this is the leading technology. Is there for a reason. Attract is a thematic open call. Now, encouragement to talk to people, especially coming from phase 1, that have complementary technologies, whether they are sensing technologies, whether they are data acquisition technologies, whether they are, for example, RFID technologies to read the data, whether they're about data visualization, computing. I mean, it's exactly the same process as when you form a consortium to write a competitive proposal for Horizon 2020. You have to think on your project value chain, and more than ever. I mean, everybody knows that Horizon 2020 is a competitive program, and always the spirit is, well, to be on the Premier League or whatever league is in. So if modality, let me see, that both modalities have the same funding rate, 100%, yes. I mean, the funding rates are no others than Horizon 2020, both for funding rates, both also for what constitutes an eligible cost, what doesn't constitute an eligible cost. So we have habilitated an email for questions. I certainly encourage you not to formulate a question before checking first the attract guide for applicants and second the Horizon 2020 guidelines. And only then, if the question is not answered, then you can formulate it. Because otherwise, and I'm going to be the one answering the questions in most of the time, I will send you to the Horizon 2020 guide for applicants. If modality 2 involves a company commercializing products aligned with the developed technology, is it sufficient to say that they will pursue commercialization at the end of the project through the established routes, or do you need, well, I mean, this in the courses I give at CERN on how to write proposals, this is the typical thing that I tell my fellow colleagues at CERN. I mean, writing in a project proposal, because we have a partner that is a company and they will undertake the commercialization process, and writing just this can be written by anyone in a proposal. If you say we have a company in our project and this is the year 1, year 2, year 3 plan in the end of the project and in subsequent steps after the project is finalized to actually achieve commercialization, is a different story. It's the same if you write in a European project, and this is something, I mean, I just offer you here for as an anecdote when I'm evaluating proposals, especially in higher TRLs. If somebody, if I as an evaluator, I see, and we will form a startup out of this project, then I say, well, they have very little idea of what is forming a startup. So yes, modality 2 involves a convincing explanation that you have a clear route to the market, that your partner in your consortium has a clear route to the market, and also, well, there is an attract template on how to make this, this visible. Can you please repeat how the budget for student projects should be managed? I mean, the R&D and our projects should be necessarily linked to. So again, don't put any budget for student activities, okay? The student activities are funded through the call for student projects. It's not your business to dedicate money for student activities. We don't want you to do so. You need to dedicate money for your research. That is why Attract is launching 3 parallel calls. One, focusing on R&D and I projects. Okay, and this is the main information of this info day. A parallel call for those universities that have proven experience with design thinking activities link to R&D and I breakthrough projects, and they will receive money to carry activities in liaison with you. And then a third call for scholars that have proven experience in socio-economic studies linking ecosystems or related to ecosystems like Attract. And they also will be funded separately through this call. So in your project, again, you don't need to dedicate any money for student activities. Is there a maximum amount of financial support for each third parties? I don't understand this question. You have the range of funding, modality A up to 500,000 euros, modality B up to 2 million euros. I told you before that you don't need to be worried about the 60K contemplated in the Appendix K. So you allocate the level of funding according to the modality that you submit to and what you agree upon yourselves in your consortium before submitting the proposal. Okay. I will give the last 2 minutes for any other question that may pop up. I hope I managed to answer all of them. I think I did. At least I went through the order I saw them in the chat. Not only me, but I think I echo Michael as PCV chair and Sergio as Independent Scientific Committee chair. The message delivered is clear on what is expected in a track phase 2. And if nothing, again, stressing out 2 things. First, if you have a question of eligibility of costs, etc., 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 check the guide for applicants of a tract. Check Horizon 2020 rules. And I'm pretty sure that 99.99% of the times you will find the answer there. A tract is no different from that. But if after checking the guide for applicants, after checking the Horizon 2020 online manual, still your question is there and is very concrete, then of course we are here to help. Now, if you try to follow the easy route, I don't take the time to figure out the question myself before, and then you go for the easy route like it happened in phase 1 of saying, I simply send an email, then I will be redirecting you to the Horizon 2020 guide for applicants. Okay, so no more questions are entering. I will stop here since I have been talking too much for good reasons, I hope. And I'll leave the room to Jonathan, who will close this info day.